So hello friends, let me welcome to all of you to this Amit Sinha IS Academy, an online initiative that we have undertaken during this period of lockdown. And let me now speak to all of you that this particular video is going to be on the issue of socio-religious reform movement. Now if you have watched my last video, there I discussed with all of you the background of socio-religious reform movements. That was the ideological underpinnings under the socio-religious reform movement. Now today we are going to discuss about the concept of socio-religious reform movements, the people who actually participated, rather who actually launched various socio-religious reform movements in India, and of course their contributions in that way, and last but not the least also the pros and cons of socio-religious reform movements. Fine. So now let me explain to all of you that this particular chapter we are going to discuss in the context of the NCERT of class 12th written by Bipin Chandra. Fine. And as I told you also in my earlier video that the socio-religious reform movement has been classified into two chapters, or three chapters I would say in this way, but two chapters mainly. That one chapter is chapter number 5 and chapter number 10. So these 5 and 10 chapters are going to be clubbed together for actually taking up this entire aspect of socio-religious reform movements that is actually given there in the NCERT particularly. Fine. And if there would be any more you can say content would required, we'll also keep adding some more additional content beyond NCERT. Fine. So let me explain to all of you the socio-religious reform movements of the 19th century in India, which is also considered to be the period of Indian Renaissance. Alright. So Indian Renaissance. Now why Indian Renaissance? Because Renaissance indicates about the rebirth and revival of the rational old ideas, the old rational ideas, of course in the contemporary era. So that what actually was the meaning of Renaissance. So of course Renaissance took place in Italy and then finally in Europe. Fine. And then finally what we see, the same modern rational thinking, scientific thinking also influenced the Indian scenario, especially in the 19th century. So let us discuss about that particular aspect very clearly. Now see, the socio-religious reform movements, of course, if you read Grover and Grover, and a very significant book on modern India, now there in the Grover and Grover, the socio-religious reform movement discusses about, there are two, in fact, the nature of socio-religious reform movement, there are two types of socio-religious reform movements launched in India. One was the reformist movements and another one was the revivalist movements. Now reformist and revivalist मतलब क्या है? मतलब ये है कि एक ऐसा मूवमेंट लॉन्च हुआ जो अपने अपने धर्म में या अपने अपने समाज में जितनी भी कुनीतियाँ थी या जो बैड प्रैक्टिसेस थे उसको रिफॉर्म करने की बात की गई, जिसको कहा गया रिफॉर्मिस्ट मूवमेंट्स. And on the other hand, there was also a parallel movement that was revivalist movement. Now, revivalist movement actually talks about the revival of the traditional or ancient religion. So, revival of traditional and ancient religion that became a fundamental objective of the revivalist movement. सवाल यहाँ ये है कि दोनों रिफॉर्म मूवमेंट्स के पार्ट थे. इन दोनों में जो डिफरेंस है वो डिग्री ऑफ कैसे कि उनका एम्फेसिस किस बात पे था, उस पे ही डिफरेंशिएट हम कर सकते हैं नेचर ऑफ सोशियो रिलीजियस रिफॉर्म मूवमेंट का. ठीक है, मतलब साफ साफ है कि कुछ मूवमेंट्स ऐसे थे जिन्होंने एंशिएंट रिलीजन के ऊपर काफ़ी एम्फेसाइज किया और कहा कि एंशिएंट रिलीजन या ट्रेडिशनल रिलीजन प्रैक्टिसेस जो थे वो सही थे, वो साइंटिफिक थे, उसको आज हमें फिर से दोबारा लाना चाहिए. तो ये जो बात कहने लगे जो रिफॉर्मर्स, उनका जो रिफॉर्म मूवमेंट्स था उसको कहा गया रिवाइवलिस्ट मूवमेंट. ठीक है, जैसे कि आप इसको ऐसे एग्जांपल ले लीजिए, आर्य समाज मूवमेंट. ठीक है, तो आर्य समाज जो मूवमेंट है उसको रिवाइवलिस्ट मूवमेंट कहा गया, ठीक है। रामकृष्ण मिशन, उसको भी रिवाइवलिस्ट मूवमेंट का दर्जे में डाला गया। देवबंद मूवमेंट सुना होगा आपने, इस्लाम के लिए भी, तो उसको भी डाला गया रिवाइवलिस्ट मूवमेंट के कैटेगरी में। खैर, इसके बारे में आगे चर्चा करेंगे, लेकिन समझना यहाँ ये है कि जो नेचर था सोशियो रिलीजियस रिफॉर्म मूवमेंट का, वो नेचर क्या था? नेचर था कि एक रिफॉर्मिस्ट था, दूसरा रिवाइवलिस्ट था। दोनों में रिफॉर्म कॉमन पार्ट था, लेकिन रिवाइवलिस्ट में एक फैक्टर बहुत ही फोकस किया गया, वो था रिवाइवल ऑफ योर ओल्ड ट्रेडिशनल रिलीजन और रिलीजियस प्रैक्टिसेस, ठीक है, इसलिए उसको रिवाइवलिस्ट कहा गया। खैर, आगे इसके बारे में हम आगे भी चर्चा करते रहेंगे। Alright, so I hope this particular aspect is clear to all of you, that what was the nature of socio-religious reform movement. Now coming on this socio-religious reform movement, that how this particular movement was led down in India and why it was led down in India, as we discussed also in the last video, that it was basically an outcome of the radical outlook. That was one of the outlooks that actually came out under the British regime. We discussed about conservative, traditional, radical, if you remember my last video, and I've told you to all of you, in fact, Raja Ram Mohan Roy was also a part of this radical outlook, which wanted to bring a reform also in India, of course on the modern and scientific lines. Fine. So having said that, let us now see the spread of socio-religious reform movements in India. कैसे कैसे इसका विस्तार हुआ, उसके बारे में एनसीईआरटी में काफी अच्छे से चर्चा की गई है, ठीक है। तो विस्तार इसका पूरे भारतवर्ष में हुआ, भारत के हर कोने में इस रिफॉर्म मूवमेंट को देखा गया, खासकर 19th सेंचुरी में। लेकिन the most important, you can say, the ground of the reform was Bengal. So Bengal became the pioneer, in fact, in terms of introducing various reforms in the socio-religious aspect. Fine. So Bengal, especially in the context of the contributions of Raja Ram Mohan Roy. Fine. So Raja Ram Mohan Roy के बारे में थोड़ा चर्चा करेंगे। उससे पहले एक छोटी सी बात जो आपको जहन में रखनी है, that why are we talking about socio-religious reform movement? Why actually have we clubbed it together? Why socio-religious reform movements have been clubbed together? Now just try to understand. See, socio-religious reform movement, the idea was there were problems in religion. There were some problems in the interpretation of religion and the attached rituals, the practices. They were also having some particular issues with the practices in the social affair of India. All right. Social behavior of India. Therefore, it was understood that religious reforms should be paramount to bring any social change in India. The reason being that behind every social evil practices, or bad practices, malpractices, religious sanctions or injunctions were actually attached to that. In other words, if sati was, of course, practiced, if sati was accepted as a common practice among the higher class of Hindus in India, of course it was backed up by some or the other interpretations of religious scriptures. All right. So therefore, it was very much important to understand that this practice, let's say sati practice. Now sati practice, which was a part of social behavior of the majority of Hindus or the upper class of Hindus at that point of time, of course this practice could not be eradicated without bringing a reform in the religious understanding or religious interpretation of that point of time. Therefore, it was socio-religious reform movement. So in other words, the social evils were the manifested problem. They were the manifested, दिख रहा था, and behind that, जो दिख नहीं रहा था, that was religious ideological background or ideological support that was attached to the bad social practices in India. Therefore, what we have to understand, when we have to eliminate any social problem, we have to see the root cause of those social problems. So the root cause was somewhere down the line, it was in the context of the religious interpretation and religious practices of that particular point of time. Hence, in this order only, the socio-religious reform movements were undertaken. तो समझ में आपको आ गया होगा कि क्यों सोशियो-रिलीजियस रिफॉर्म मूवमेंट्स हम दोनों वर्ड साथ यूज करते हैं, क्योंकि सोसाइटी में रिफॉर्म तब तक पॉसिबल नहीं था जब तक कि धर्म में रिफॉर्म ना हो, क्योंकि धर्म जो है वो सोशल प्रैक्टिसेस को सपोर्ट कर रहा था. Therefore, every modern thinker, they realize that without bringing any reform in the religious practices, social reform is very far to be achieved in India. Now, in this context, the role of Raja Ram Mohan Roy is to be analyzed. Fine. So, what we have to say, the socio-religious reform movements took place in every part of India: Bengal, Western India, Southern India, and other parts of India also. And in your NCERT also, it has been discussed in the same order. Alright. So one part Bengal has been discussed, another part Western Indian reformers were discussed, and even some part of, in a smaller part I would say, even the Southern Indian reformers have also been discussed. Fine. So we'll talk about all these three segments of the reformers. Fine. So Raja Ram Mohan Roy, he became the pioneer, but in fact the first modern man of India. So the era of Raja Ram Mohan Roy is said to be the beginning of modern India. In fact, how do we classify that when modern India started, or what is the period of modern India? So obviously the period of modern India we classify in the context of the outbreak of these social reform movements, especially led by people like Raja Ram Mohan Roy. So the Raja Ram Mohan Roy era is understood to be the beginning of modern India in India. Alright. So Raja Ram Mohan Roy became the pioneer in the socialist reform movements, and alright, and we have to understand his contributions in different contexts. So if you can see on the board, which I have already mentioned to all of you, just to of course limit down our time. So if you can see on the board, his work started right from 1809 itself. I'm talking about his reforms. So Raja Ram Mohan Roy's contributions can be seen in terms of his various reforms. Now he was a very well-educated modern man of India. He knew Sanskrit, he knew Arabic, he knew of course Urdu, he also knew Greek, Latin. So he was a well-read person. He got his let's say training of Sanskrit in Banaras, similarly training of the language of Persia or Persian language in Patna, or Arabic language in Patna. So he was a well-read person, alright, and having of course full exposure to the global world at that point of time. Fine. So what we have to understand, his reforms started in various fields. For example, religious field. Now in the context of religious field, what are reforms we have to note down? See, the first and the foremost reform was in 1809. He wrote a particular pamphlet that is named as Gift to Monotheist. Now Gift to Monotheist is the first writings, one of the first writings of Raja Ram Mohan Roy, where he talked about the significance of the practice of worshipping single God. So worshipping single God. Now let me explain to you here itself. See, in society there were two major problems in India. One was casteism, another was the degradation of status of women. Now casteism and women position, they all degraded due to the religious, of course, backup to all these things. So he understood that particular aspect only, and therefore what he started doing, he started bringing the reform in religion. So what was his idea? His idea was that there has to be a worshipping of a single God. There should not be multiple gods. So every community, every creed, every caste, every religion is actually worshipping the same God, the single God. And his idea became quite popular. Rather, he would start making this idea very popular through his Gift to Monotheist. That was his first writings of Raja Ram Mohan Roy. Fine. Then accordingly, what he did, he also constituted an organization, and institutional setup to his entire ideas was actually established in 1814 in Atmiya Sabha. So he established Atmiya Sabha, and in Atmiya Sabha the objective was to bring reforms in Hinduism में अंदर रिफॉर्म चाहिए था, लाना था इनको, खासकर बंगाल के अंदर. सो बंगाल के अंदर आत्मीय सभा 1814 में इन्होंने बनाया, और उन्होंने ये भी किया कि उस आत्मीय सभा के द्वारा उन्होंने हिंदुइज्म के अंदर जो कृतियाँ थी, जो बैड प्रैक्टिसेस थे उसको रिफॉर्म करने की बात करनी शुरू कर दी, ठीक है। और इसी संदर्भ में उन्होंने हिंदुइज्म के रिफॉर्म्स की चर्चा की, और हिंदुइज्म में जो बैड प्रैक्टिसेस थे जैसे कि कास्टिज्म, रिचुअलिज्म, dominance of priestly class, so of course these all things had to be reformed, and the practice of idol worship was also condemned by Raja Ram Mohan Roy through Atmiya Sabha. That was his contribution in religion. Fine. Similarly, if you see further in 1820, I'll come to this, but in 1820, precepts of Jesus. Now, precepts of Jesus in 1820 became his second piece of important writings. All right. Which actually talked about the significance of the Christianity, the good things about Christianity also for Hinduism. So what he talked about the importance of the moral messages given by Jesus Christ, and those moral messages to be incorporated also in Hinduism. However, he was critical. However, Raja Ram Mohan Roy was equally critical to the traditional bad practices of Christianity. Alright, so he was critical to the Trinity in Christianity also. He was also critical to the ritualism in Christianity as well, orthodoxy in Christianity as well. But at the same time, he was also very much a man of liberal ideas and open ideas and open mind, where he also found out that some of the good things in Christianity should also be incorporated in Hinduism. So this what actually was his idea through precepts of Jesus, which he wanted to propagate and promote across Bengal and other parts of India as well. Fine. Now, on this issue, when he appreciated Christianity and Jesus Christ and his ideas to be incorporated in Hinduism, of course he had to face the wrath of the Orthodox Hindu in India. So the Orthodox Hindus, especially in Bengal, they became highly critical to Raja Ram Mohan Roy, and they also conducted a social boycott. Raja Ram Mohan Roy also faced social boycott from the Orthodox Hindu preachers at that point of time. You can simply imagine, even his mother of Raja Ram Mohan Roy की माँ भी उनको boycott कर दी, इस बात पे कि उन्होंने क्रिश्चियनिटी को अप्रिशिएट किया और हिंदुइज्म को तिरस्कार किया या क्रिटिसाइज किया, और ये कहा कि क्रिश्चियनिटी के अच्छे फीचर्स जो है वो हिंदुइज्म के अंदर होने चाहिए, ठीक है। तो आप समझ सकते हैं कि कितना बड़ा जो कंजर्वेटिव माइंडसेट था वहाँ एग्जिस्ट करता था उस जमाने में भारत में, उस कंजर्वेटिव माइंडसेट को तोड़ना, इट वाज अ बिग चैलेंज फॉर हिम. ऑलराइट, ही आल्सो हैड टू फेस the social boycott also from his own mother. Now you can understand that particular aspect. Then finally he came out in 1828 with the concept of Brahmo Samaj or Brahmo Sabha, alright, which will later on turn out to be Brahmo Sabha. So Brahmo Samaj was formed by him in 1828, and here the idea of purifying Hinduism became a dominant ideology for Raja Ram Mohan Roy. So what he did, he also started promoting the idea of purifying Hinduism and all those practices which actually promoted casteism and Brahminical dominance over Hinduism. He rejected all those ideas. So he rejected all those ideas, and in this idea only he also became, I would say the propagator of the Vedantic philosophy, which understood to be, which actually meant to be understood in this particular manner, that God is one. In Vedanta, the ideology is the God is one, and in everyone, in every individual, in every human being, you can find out a God. So service to man is service to God. That actually was the Vedantic philosophy. Alright. So he also professed the Vedantic philosophy, especially in Brahmo Sabha. Alright. So this is what actually was his religious contribution. Fine. Now at the same time, he also tried to bring some social reforms as well. Social reforms, like he was very instrumental in abolishing the practice of sati in India. So sati practice got abolished in 1829, which we have discussed also in our last video. If you can see the last video, you can remember that. So he was very instrumental in convincing the British government to abolish the practice of sati to make it illegal practice in India, which he was successful in doing that in 1829. So abolishment of sati was one of the major contributions of Raja Ram Mohan Roy. Fine. That is not the only contribution. Rather, he also, a very important fact I am sharing with all of you, he also promoted Seva form of marriage in India. This question can be asked to you in UPSC prelims in any year. What was? Seva form of marriages. So he promoted the practice of Seva form of marriages. Under this marriages, the expenditure on marriages were minimal, were very much minimal, and lack of rituals, in fact no rituals were actually promoted in such kind of marriages, because in marriages also the of course the parents of the bride, they had to spend a lot of money at that point of time as well, in the form of dowry and also the management of entire marriage ceremony. Fine. So he promoted Saiva form of marriages to lessen down the burden on the parents of a girl child at that point of time. Fine. So socio-religious reform movement, in this order he started bringing. At the same time, one fundamental issue that was there in social reform movement, and that was in the context of the education. So in education also he laid down a very important role, and he played a very important role in terms of bringing some educational reforms also in India. For example, in 1817, Hindu College was established in Kolkata or Calcutta. So Hindu College was established in Calcutta with the assistance of David Hare, a watchmaker in fact. So a watchmaker, David Hare, he actually played instrumental role in establishing Hindu College along with Raja Ram Mohan Roy in 1817. That was his major contribution towards education. Similarly, in 1825, he also set up Vedanta College in 1825. So Raja Ram Mohan Roy also set up Vedanta College in 1825 in Calcutta, of course to propagate the modern and scientific education among the people of Bengal. So this is how his contributions were there in the context of education also. All right. Now coming to the of course his other contributions. Now see, as I just told you, he was one of the most liberal man, most modern man of his time. He was much ahead from his time at that point of era, in that particular era. All right. So he was a person who was well known in terms of the political, you can say, outlook,